This is a passionate plea for the sake of others. Because it seems when I pled for myself from the depths of my soul, as I was reaching out and up from the abyss of my life that was dragging me down, it felt as if no one could hear my silent screams for help. Screams so loud and panicked it tore my vocal cords into splinters and wrenched my throat until the pain felt like sandpaper against a cement wall, only no one could hear it. Until one day, as I was about to give up, give in, and claim that I was defeated, I was saved. And my Savior didn't just happen by one day as I continued my rants and ravings, as I cursed and clawed, as drool drizzled down my chin, as my eyes were dry, parched of moisture, no longer shedding tears, but felt like steel pads, as I blinked away the day and cowered from the night. No, my Savior was there the entire time. On those days when I knew that I was going to have to make some one more devastating decision, but it's going to be the last, I swear I won't have to do this again decision. My Savior was right there. And when I was tearing to shreds the last vestiges of hope that I had because there wasn't enough nickels or dimes or pesos coming my way, and I just was going down that dark and dismal tunnel because I didn't care if there was a light at the end. And just when I was signing off and saying my goodbyes, I was through yelling and fighting, debating, procrastinating, and pontificating. There he was. And I said I wasn't going to plead anymore. I knew what I'd done. I wasn't proud of it. And if I had to do it again, well, I just have to cross that bridge, wouldn't I? But I know in the back of my mind, I was still crying out for help. I was still hoping on hope that help would come. And even though I'd committed myself to the inevitable, I'd set myself on a course of no return. But he was right there, all along. He was actually waiting for me to stop all the screaming, yelling, and confusion I was putting myself through. And when that happened, there he was. His hand was out, and his arms were around me, and I was gathered into them like a baby. And I cried the cleansing cry of a lost soul who just wanted somebody to listen. I realized that had I not stopped and taken stock of myself, my life, my present, what I was about to embark upon, I would never have heard him. So I make this passionate plea to you. You who seem to believe that there is no way out, no one person who will come to your aid, hold your hand, see you through, stand by your side, give you a shoulder to cry on, listen when you're down, celebrate with you when all is well, be in the midst, or just be quiet and let you know that there's just where you want them to be when you need assurance. I have a Savior. He wants to be yours too.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Johanna Bright, and I am your host for Poetry Song BFD Battle for Dominance. And right now, it is, what time is it? It is 1:55 p.m. That's right, almost 2 o'clock. And I hope that you all are having a really good time on this beautiful fall day. I'm loving the weather. Uh, I decided that I want to do a broadcast right this very minute because everybody seems to be talking about one thing that has absolutely nothing to do with the thing that should be spoken about. And what is that? Taking the knee. So that's what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about taking the knee, why it's important, why we need to stop and allow ourselves to say taking the knee has nothing to do with the national anthem, the flag, or the NFL. I'm Joe Bright. This is Joe's Poetry. Excerpts from my radio coming up. Excerpts from my radio. Boy, I'm having a day. Oh no. So let me start that all over again. I am Johanna Bright. This is Poetry Song, Battle for Dominance. As you can see, it's something that goes on in our life every day. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube at Joe's Poetry, excerpts from my resume. Right now, my chat box is open. You can say whatever you need to say. I don't particularly play music. But what I do want to talk about is, like I said, is why are people right now talking about the NFL players who are taking a knee or standing in solidarity during the national anthem before their games start. And let's not forget, it has also happened during a baseball game. I forget which one it was, but it did happen. So here's the thing. When Kaepernick took the knee, a little over a year ago now, uh, he knelt in protest of police brutality against all of the black people, men especially, who have been killed. Be, they were not killed because they were trying to get away from the police or that they were threatening the police. They were killed because they were black. That's all I'm saying. And he was protesting that. He was making a statement saying, well, if that's what this flag stands for, if that's what this anthem stands for, then I protest because we are upholding something that's not true for everybody. That's basically what he was saying. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Let me know if I'm wrong. But the fact is, here we are a year later. He lost his job. He's been giving away $1 million of his own income to other charities to promote black-owned businesses and black-owned organizations and just staying true to his word. But in the interim, he lost his job. He is a free agent. It's like a man without a country in the football world. But he's doing something far more important than any one of us can even begin to understand. His the great sacrifice, I think. How many of us would say, you know what, I got a few $1,000s in the bank. I'm going to make it till I can find another job. This job is treating me like shit. I'm a black person and I deserve better treatment. And you do a protest and they fire you and you leave your job. You say, fuck it, I don't need you. How many of us have actually done that in this generation? Because we're afraid to lose our income. Because we're saying, well, I don't make that much money now. But it's a choice, right? He made a choice. And he's standing by his choice. So what's the conversation today? Before I bring up that person, let's just be really clear. The NFL is a platform. When you have a huge platform like that and you have millions upon hundreds of millions of people who come to your games, who buy your product, they are your livelihood. And the people who play that game, who you contract to get on that field at a detriment to their life, many of them, for the detriment of their life, and you are reaping the rewards of people. And all you have to do is sit back and watch, and you fire that person because of what they did. Not what they said, but what they did. And you fired them because you were insulted. Just insulted. Now, here's the thing. Now the NFL has, they have stood in solidarity with Kaepernick. And I believe it's 28 of the National League teams or the league, 28 teams have stood in solidarity with Kaepernick, and there were 3 that didn't. I believe it was only 30 or 31. And the fact is, now, a year later, they're standing in solidarity with him. Now, I just want to say, I personally have boycotted football since before everybody decided that, oh, we're going to boycott it. Because anyway, I have my reasons. And they're very much like what Kaepernick. When I saw what he did, I thought, you know what, he's right. Why should I pour my money, my time, that I can do anything else with, into something that obviously is not even thinking about how I feel about anything, you know. That's the problem with black people in this country. Every time we open up our mouth and try to protest something, we're accused of whining and don't know what we're doing, and you know. But history tells the tale. So the NFL sits behind, or stands behind, or kneels behind Kaepernick, and they all do it at the anthem. A couple of teams did not come onto the field until the anthem was over, and I considered that a form of protest, or at least in solidarity of the protest. It just all made sense. And then the president of this country insults the team's members who are on the knee on not on the field, but during the national anthem, and he calls them sons of bitches. Says I fired them, and I posted it on my social media saying, you know what? He's inciting violence again. He not only did that because of what he tweeted, and because of the statement wasn't made in a tweet, it was actually made at a Republican gathering that he was at last Friday. That that's what he would do. He said, I would fire them. I would fire the son of bitches. And he literally insulted people who had put money in his pocket to put him where he is today, in his coffers, excuse me. And so now we're looking at the NFL and other sports leagues. I'll have something to say about it. But here's the fact. Now the narrative of why Kaepernick took the knee has been changed. They're talking about where you're disrespecting the flag, you're disrespecting the anthem, you're disrespecting the military, you're just being disrespectful. Well, protesting isn't supposed to be respectful. Think of that. It's not supposed to be respectful. Protesting is saying something completely different from being respectful. Not to mention, they're also telling us that we don't know how to protest, that we don't know when to protest, and that we should protest on our own time. Well, guess what? We are. We are protesting on our own time. It's our time when we're protesting. And if you don't like it, you can leave. You can say whatever you want. And see, that's the beauty of this country. We're free to say and do whatever we want, and no one can take that from us. Although that's a whole nother conversation. The president would like to change that too. So anyway, I'm going to play you one of my favorites. It's called White Privilege, Black History. See, this is my problem with all these fabulous, amazing, and wonderful protests and gatherings. All the nations that have come together to help the indigenous people, to keep big corporations from drilling for oil on their native land and sacred burial grounds. We want to keep them from destroying the ecosystem for what could possibly be 100 generations. It's so amazing how every nation came together again and protested in every airport in the country, and how ride sharing came to a halt. The workers just refused to work, and the CEO of the company donated $1 million to the cause. I mean, just thinking about the unfathomable amount of human beings around the world that came together for the Women's March, it blows me away. Even the press and all the mass media are in one accord against the orange one, because their integrity is in question, as if it wasn't before. Every person I know has an opinion of outrage and disgust, everyone agreeing to that moral outrage because of the actions of the current administration. See, I can call them that at least. But what about us, the disenfranchised black people of this country? We who protested and cried out for help when Trayvon and Michael and Eric and dozens more black men were murdered in their own neighborhoods through the abuse of authority in the police force in this country. Where was the moral outrage of all the nations in this country then? Where were the veterans and the women's rights groups and the Muslims and the immigrants who are being rounded up and told they have to leave now? Where are the Mexicans who are looking at a possible wall built to keep them out of this country? I want to laugh at that, but I won't. Where are the indigenous people? All 60 nations. The press was there because there was a story to be told and sold to get shares on the open market. Where were the judges and politicians making stands and speeches and proclamations overturning unjust and poor decisions, demanding investigations into each and every one of the officers involved, changing the laws? They have that authority. You looked at us as we marched and yelled in righteous indignation, crying out for justice, begging to be seen and heard by deaf ears. And there was a dead silence for many of our non-black communities. While I really do understand that many of you do agree that the treatment of my people has been deplorable, disgusting, and inhumane, why didn't you come out in droves and become that protective shield that everyone else has with your white privilege? You know, if you just all showed up, that protest would have been different. But you didn't. Black history tells the truth, just not as much as yours. Black Lives Matter, the social activism group, has been petitioned to the Senate to be designated as a terrorist group. Whom did we terrorize? When was your way of life in jeopardy? Were you afraid we would march right up to your doorstep and shine a light on your white privilege? Did you think that the financial value of your home would decrease if you showed up? Did you think that your precious children, and they are, would see the evil underbelly of racism that is the beast that devours this country? Progressives, liberals, Democrats, Republicans, you all say all lives matter, and they do. Mine just matters less than yours. And if you think I'm blowing smoke up your ass or whining, there's your proof right there about how you really feel. Come out from behind your doors and windows. Stop using your children as an excuse for not showing up. We know it's dangerous undertaking to stand side by us. We know because we're out there in the underbelly of the beast of hatred all the time. We are the disenfranchised. I know you're afraid that the police will not see your white privilege and shoot you too, but this is what we face every day. Do I have to remind you of the bodies hung on trees, metaphorically called strange fruit? We are that strange fruit. Do I have to continue to draw your attention to the young black men burned on a cross and laid on a heap of smoldering wood while white privilege stands around gawking at him, proud of what they have done? Do I have to show you Philip Castile dying from a gunshot wound on a social media video from a police officer who saw him as a threat to society and not a father of the child in the back seat or the mother in the front seat behind the wheel begging him to stay alive through the mere virtue of his own will? He died anyway. And the wife, she was handcuffed, her child taken from her temporarily. However, we are called terrorists, and you buy into it. Why? What terrors in the night have we brought upon you? And do you lay awake at night thinking, I could just join in that march, make a difference? But the police might not see my white privilege. All they may see is, what? Human beings standing for the rights of other human beings. You have the power to make the powers that be see me as a human being. You have the power to turn the tide of racism to love and acceptance of your fellow man. You used it on the righteous indignation you felt when immigrants were banned from our country. You felt it when you heard a wall was being built to keep out our southern brothers from another mother. You felt it when the rights of women were being stepped on for the umpteenth time in the greatest march in the history of protests. But when we get together to protest the hypocrisy of our government, the unjust treatment of our people, the genocide of our nation, you go stone cold silent. We continue to cry out for help for all the unjust, discriminatory, and outright hateful actions against us. And you know that they are. But you won't stand with us. You know what? I realize I'm going to have to play that again because I had it on mute. Sorry about that. It was called White Privilege, Black History. I'll play it again. But right now, it's all about that right now, isn't it? Because, and let's just be real clear. I have white people in my family. I do. I have Filipinos, Mexicans, Indians, Muslims. That's right. Mixed people in my family. If you want to cover what the statistics are of how diverse a one single black family can be in this country, I promise you, you will find it all in my family. That's right. Let me take my father. He was an American Indian. His father was one, and his father was one. But he married an Irish. One of my father's great grandfather was a white man, and his name was Philip McMillan. My grandmother on my mother's side, her parents were black. One was black, one was white. My mother, her mother, of course, is biracial. My mother's father was Mexican. My mother is a Muslim, black American. Just rest on that for a second. So now we fast forward to me, because I come from a family of 14, of 11 girls and 4 brothers. And I've been married twice, and my first husband and I have 1 child. My second husband and I have 2. My second husband had 2 children. They're passed. And we have altogether between us 4 children. All right. So now my children are adults. My one son was married to a white girl. They have 2 beautiful grandchildren. I have 2 beautiful grandchildren. My daughter, she just had a baby, and her baby's father, is a Mexican. Not half, not gonna be a Mexican. So now, when you think about that, you go, oh, okay, yeah. See, my family has Muslims, Mexicans, white people, black people, Filipino, and American Indian. Let's not forget the Christians that are in my family, and the Hebrew Israelites that are in my family. Let's not, and we do have an abundance of women in my family, and men. And yes, I have nephews who were unjustly incarcerated, and some justly, because that happens. So all these things are right here in my family. So whenever something like anything, I mean, you pick it out. Talk about incarceration of the black man, the killing of the land of the American Indian, building a wall with the Mexicans, telling Muslims they have to get out of the country. You pick something, and that is an important subject in my family, and we discuss it. And we're disgusted with it. Because what they're saying is, we don't matter. And I'm going to tell you right now, the statistics haven't come out yet, and they really should. There are really, I mean, a lot of people think, oh, there's more white people in this country than there are black people. I want to say I beg to differ, because they said, I looked it up, and the statistics are behind. They have been behind since 2012. They have not been able to keep up with the births of minorities in this country since 2012. Since they said that Spanish people are now the new minority. But if that's the case, you're talking about what? The tables of power should be flipping, but they aren't. They're tilting, but they're not flipping. Anyway, so back to today's subject. I had to say that. I'm Johanna Bright. This is Poetry Song BFD. You can follow me on Twitter at Mama Yaya Bright. You can follow me on Facebook at Johanna Bright. You can follow me on YouTube at Joe's Poetry, excerpts from my resume. Or you can just Google me at Johanna Bright. I'm on there too. So today's subject is taking the knee. Well, today's subject surrounds the phrase, and I'm going to hashtag that, take the knee, because I that's what I did. On my Facebook page last night, I posted pictures of myself and my husband and my older children taking the knee. And we didn't wait for the national anthem or the flag, because the important part about taking the knee at this point in time, just to save the narrative that Kaepernick started, is because of the police brutality that has taken place on black people in this country. It has nothing to do with disrespecting the flag, the national anthem, or the military. So, Nice little dovetail, right? Because I want to talk about the military. In explanation, I want to specifically talk about a specific Air Force Academy general. His name is Lieutenant General J. Silveria. He is the superintendent of the U.S. Air Force Academy, made a sharp statement to cadets after racial slurs were discovered on students' rooms. 5 black students' rooms. And what it really came down to was he said, if you can't respect anyone, you need to get out. And he didn't mean get out the country. He meant leave the academy. And he spoke to all 4,700 members of the academy, including that number, not including his staff, whom he had all of them leave, stop what they're doing, come to him, and he spoke to everyone. And in no uncertain terms, he said, if we have to be morally courageous, and if you cannot respect someone, regardless, and I'm paraphrasing now, but regardless of race, creed, color, or sexual orientation, you need to get out. And I thought, that's exactly what we need to hear from our government. But those aren't the words that we're hearing from our government. We're hearing them from specific individuals who have power and authority to make other people obey. Basically, it can't make them change the way they're thinking, but it can make them obey. Because he said that he will not stand for anything like that in his academy and in the Air Force, because that academy prepares them to serve in the military. The military that some people are saying that are being disrespected because people are taking the knee in protest of injustices in this country. Now, it can be police brutality. It could be any kind. But brutality is brutality against anyone. But right now, for the sake of the conversation, we're talking about police brutality against black people in this country. And when you hear the conversation, if you have internet, then you realize that the conversation that they're talking about today, they haven't even brought up what the narrative is. They just keep saying you're disrespecting the flag and you're disrespecting the national anthem. And that's just not the truth of why people are taking the knee. The people on my Facebook page, if they haven't, I wish they would, take a picture of yourself taking the knee and say, it's because I am protesting injustices, police brutality on the black people in this country, that you still respect the military. And I'm going to be real clear. My husband is a veteran. My father was a veteran. My father-in-law was a veteran. My grandfather was a veteran. I have 2 nephews and 1 niece who are veterans. My youngest brother is a veteran. So for anybody to say that we're disrespecting the flag and the anthem and the military, they are so far off the margin of what that's about. It's just insane. Anyway, that's what that was all about. I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna let you all hear once more because I realized that it wasn't playing. It's called White Privilege, Black History. I hope you can hear it this time. No, you can't. This is Joe Bright for Poetry Song BFD Battle for Dominance. See, this is my problem with all these fabulous, amazing, and wonderful protests and gatherings. All the nations that have come together to help the indigenous people, to keep big corporations from drilling for oil on their native land and sacred burial grounds. We want to keep them from destroying the ecosystem for what could possibly be 100 generations. It's so amazing how every nation came together again and protested in every airport in the country, and how ride-sharing came to a halt. The workers just refused to work, and the CEO of the company donated $1 million to the cause. I mean, just thinking about the unfathomable amount of human beings around the world that came together for the Women's March, it blows me away. Even the press and all the mass media are in one accord against the orange one. because their integrity is in question, as if it wasn't before. Every person I know has an opinion of outrage and disgust, everyone agreeing to that moral outrage because of the actions of the current administration. See, I can call them that at least. But what about us, the disenfranchised black people of this country? We who protested and cried out for help when Trayvon and Michael and Eric and dozens more black men were murdered in their own neighborhoods through the abuse of authority in the police force in this country. What was the moral outrage of all the nations in this country then? Where were the veterans and the women's rights groups and the Muslims and the immigrants who are being rounded up and told they have to leave now? Where are the Mexicans who are looking at a possible wall built to keep them out of this country? I want to laugh at that, but I won't. Where are the indigenous people? All 60 nations. The press was there because there was a story to be told and sold to get shares on the open market. Where were the judges and politicians making stands and speeches and proclamations overturning unjust and poor decisions, demanding investigations into each and every one of the officers involved, changing the laws? They have that authority. You looked at us as we marched and yelled in righteous indignation, crying out for justice, begging to be seen and heard by deaf ears. And there was a dead silence for many of our non-black communities. While I really do understand that many of you do agree that the treatment of my people has been deplorable, disgusting, and inhumane, why didn't you come out in droves and become that protective shield that everyone else has with your white privilege? You know, if you just all showed up, that protest would have been different. But you didn't. Black history tells the truth, just not as much as yours. Black Lives Matter, the social activism group, has been petitioned to the Senate to be designated as a terrorist group. Whom did we terrorize? When was your way of life in jeopardy? Were you afraid we would march right up to your doorstep and shine a light on your white privilege? Did you think that the financial value of your home would decrease if you showed up? Did you think that your precious children, and they are, would see the evil underbelly of racism that is the beast that devours this country? Progressives, liberals, Democrats, Republicans, you all say all lives matter, and they do. Mine just matters less than yours. And if you think I'm blowing smoke up your ass or whining, there's your proof right there about how you really feel. Come out from behind your doors and windows. Stop using your children as an excuse for not showing up. We know it's dangerous undertaking to stand side by us. We know because we're out there in the underbelly of the beast of hatred all the time. We are the disenfranchised. I know you're afraid that the police will not see your white privilege and shoot you too, but this is what we face every day. Do I have to remind you of the bodies hung on trees, metaphorically called strange fruit? We are that strange fruit. Do I have to continue to draw your attention to the young black men burned on a cross and laid on a heap of smoldering wood while white privilege stands around gawking at him, proud of what they have done? Do I have to show you Philip Castile dying from a gunshot wound on a social media video from a police officer who saw him as a threat to society and not a father of the child in the back seat or the mother in the front seat behind the wheel begging him to stay alive with the mere virtue of his own will? He died anyway, and the wife, she was handcuffed, her child taken from her temporarily. However, we are called terrorists, and you buy into it. Why? What terrors in the night have we brought upon you? And do you lay awake at night thinking, I could just join in that march, make a difference? But the police might not see my white privilege. All they may see is, what? Human beings standing for the rights of other human beings. You have the power to make the powers that be see me as a human being. You have the power to turn the tide of racism to love and acceptance of your fellow man. You used it on the righteous indignation you felt when immigrants were banned from our country. You felt it when you heard a wall was being built to keep out our southern brothers from another mother. You felt it when the rights of women were being stepped on for the umpteenth time in the greatest march in the history of protests. But when we get together to protest the hypocrisy of our government, the unjust treatment of our people, the genocide of our nation, you go stone cold silent. We continue to cry out for help for all the unjust, discriminatory, and outright hateful actions against us. And you know that they are, but you won't stand with us.
Well, here we are. I'm Joe Bright. This is Poetry Song BFD. I am on Spreaker.com. Download the app and listen in. Um, First of all, I might play that again because I think it speaks volumes about everything that's going on right now. Uh, Secondly, guess what? I was looking at the AP. I go on my, everybody else. You go on your email in the morning, you check stuff out, and I've been trying to tell myself, no, don't just do a podcast just because you got a podcast and talk about, any old thing. I wanted to make sure that I talk about things that matter. Guess what? Black Lives Matter. Yep. And guess what else? A judge, this is off the AP, Associated Press. This is off the AP, out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. A sitting U.S. District Judge, Brian Jackson, dismissed the officer's suit who anonymously sued Black Lives Matter and D. Ray McKesson. He's a prominent activist in the movement after being injured by a rock was thrown during a protest over a deadly police shooting in Baton Rouge last year. So McKesson did not throw the rock. It could not be proved that he threw the rock. However, according to this police officer, his lawyer said that he was giving orders and telling people to throw rocks, and that couldn't be proved either. However, his suit was thrown out, and this is why. The judge concluded that although many entities have utilized the phrase Black Lives Matter in their titles or business designations, Black Lives Matter itself is not an entity of any sort. And he had a 24-page ruling. It's not an entity, it's a movement. Black Lives Matter is a movement. Very much like, what did he say? Very much like the Civil Rights Movement. Or you pick something. I mean, the fact is, it's a movement. It doesn't belong to anybody. There are no officers. What does it say? This says the judge also concluded that the officer's own claims demonstrated that McKesson solely engaged in protected speech at the July 9th, 2016 demonstration, which followed the fatal shooting of Alton Sterling, a black man, by a white Baton Rouge police officer. He said, I quote, "It is clear that I did nothing," McKesson said, "that I did nothing wrong that day, and the police were the only violent people in the streets." McKesson, a Baltimore resident, said after learning the judge's ruling. The movement began as a call to end violence, and that call remains the same today. The judge ruled that a hashtag can't be sued either. Did you hear that? A hashtag cannot be sued because they actually tried. Somebody, this guy actually tried. He tried to sue the hashtag Black Lives Matters. Right. All right, so this is why the judge says it's for reasons that should be obvious. A hashtag is an expression that categorizes or classifies a person's thought, is not a judicial person, and therefore lacks the capacity to be sued. That is what the judge wrote. And the guy who's trying to do it, his name is Grodner. What a name. Anyway, he said it's organized. They have meetings. They solicit money. They have national chapters. That shows a level of national organization. Well, if that's the case, then if you want to sue Black Lives Matters, then black folks, y'all get y'all pens and papers and lawyers out, because we're going to sue the KKK. And what other white socialists? These white racists, they always want to come up with some reason why we shouldn't be doing what we should be doing. And the reason is because of their mindset. They still look at us as they once owned us. And since
They owned us. They have every right to tell us what we could do. That's their mindset. Sorry, that's just the truth. That's how I see it. Anyway, you can't sue a hashtag. You can't sue Black Lives Matter because it's a movement. It's nobody owns it. No particular one person. There's no brick and mortar place to go to. Black Lives Matter is a movement just like the civil rights movement. And it's what it is. It's a civil rights movement. It's about our civil rights and how they're constantly and have always been and continue to be stomped on. It's just the way it is. We're constantly being stomped on. I got one more, two more poems to play for you. This next one is called, you guessed it, Anger Issues.
Anger issues. I have them. Yes, I do. I can't remember when I didn't. Sometimes when you least expect it, an infinitesimal thought from a time you haven't given thought to in a long time takes advantage of a quiet time. Slips in under the radar in a moment of introspection, blasting through like a tidal wave during a day at the park near the shore, while you're enjoying a glass of Chardonnay with your significant other who just happens to be apologizing again. And it's there. And you really don't have a full memory of why anger is an issue. It just is. But anger is in the details. The first time I rolled my eyes in righteous indignation, my youth clouded my ability to see anything except what I wanted. My eyes rolled clean through my teens, and as time passed, as the years do, my hands made gestures clearly not measured in the least explainable. But whenever the feeling of anger arose, it became clear where the fuse started and ended. With me, externally. Hands raised in the air, fists balled into knots, my fingers splayed, pointing accusations at the offending party. But just when you think that you're going to have a time to cool down, doesn't happen. But your head, it can't stop throbbing because you really didn't realize that your eyes became shot with blood, your face contorted to a point that you can see harsh lines along your cheekbones. But the worst part was feeling your heart race like a herd of stampeding rhino or elephants, and your jaw aching because before you even said a word, you were grinding and gritting your molars so hard it was what caused the headache in the first place. And you're gripping something balled in your hands and find it's just tissue. Time is not your friend in times like these. And you know it's best to keep your mouth shut, stay out of it. Sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you just can't.
So here I am, Johanna Bright, your host of Poetry Song BFD, Battle for Dominance. And I want to thank you for tuning in. You can follow me on YouTube at Joe's Poetry, excerpts from my resume, on Twitter, on Instagram. But mostly, you know where you can find everything that I do. Go to my website. It's at mamayaya.wixsite.com/website. That's MOMMAYA.wixsite.com/website. And you will see this episode and other episodes that I've done. All my poetry. You can buy your favorite track of my poetry right there on site for 99 cents each. I just want to say one final thing. In this country, protests have gone down, some violently, some not. But it just seems to me that there is never going to be a perfect time to protest. Somebody's always going to have something bad to say about it. What we need to do when we protest in this country, black people, brown people, yellow people, people who are disenfranchised, we protest wherever and wherever you can, and we don't allow them to change our narrative or tell us when, where, or how we should do it, because that's our right. I'm Johanna Bright. This is Poetry Song, Battle for Dominance. Thank you for listening. Do I have something to share with you? One quick thing before I go? Probably, always. I got something for everybody. But you know what? Until then, you all have a good day and a fantastic weekend.
AVS Media Demo.
Altars. Come, place your offering at my feet. Erect statues of honor in me. Submit yourselves before the altar of your choice. Line the streets of your neighborhood with flags on totems
AVS
and
Media
street lights
Demo.
that dim the shadows of life. Prostrate yourself before this placard of love, hate, this symbol of your most secret desire. Pray for ardently, burn incense incessantly.
AVS
Work,
Media
work,
Demo.
work. morning remembrances, afternoon supplications, evening